He's an unforgettable birth because he was born in Valentine's.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to get started with our House Appropriations Subcommittee on Corrections this morning. Thank all of you for being here. Madam Clerk, would you please take roll?
Representative O'Neill.
Present.
Representative McKinney.
Here.
Representative Morse. Here. Representative Snyder. Representative Slaw.
Here.
Representative Bolin. Here. Representative Leitner. Here. Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, Representative Bolin moves to approve the minutes from the subcommittee meeting held February 15, 2024. Hearing no objections, minutes are adopted. Okay, thank you all for being here again. We had to make some adjustments with our time, as you see, but we appropriated $33.1 million in the current year budget for either expansion or existing programs or new programs. And so today we'd like to hear the status from the department, and then we will hear from representatives from the Goodwill Flip the Script program. And with that program, we appropriated a total of $2.6 million in the budget for Goodwill. So please help me welcome Mr. Kyle Comiskey, Offender Success Administrator and Legislative Liaison, for this presentation. Kyle, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'll take the applause. Usually you get that after you speak, but I'll take it before in this case. I do know we're a little compressed for time, so I'm going to move relatively quickly so that the folks from Goodwill also have an opportunity to present. But as the chairman mentioned, the FY24 budget was really remarkable in terms of the scale and scope, in terms of new initiatives for the MDOC. And our teams internally got right to work on all of those initiatives, and I'll be providing an update on each of them. The reality is that things like contracting, hiring staff, et cetera, don't happen overnight. There are processes that underpin each of those, but we feel like we've made really solid progress on each of these as we moved along. So first, key investment was our body-worn cameras. We received both one-time and ongoing funding for this. This would be the first deployment of body-worn cameras within the MDOC. We received 8 positions. All 8 of those positions have now been filled. So we have a body-worn camera manager as well as a unit that will support both the technology as well as staff training and working with staff. And we're in the final stages of selecting a vendor and signing a vendor contract for the actual technology. Once we're able to do that, we will purchase the technology, and we'll be able to then start to roll it out at the facilities. It will be a phased deployment for us. So we're not going to go to every facility on the same day and roll it out statewide. That wouldn't be feasible from a support perspective, but we expect that we'll start to deploy early this summer, and then we'll continue to deploy throughout the rest of the year. While we've been working on the technology piece of this, we've had a team made up of staff from throughout the department that's been working on the draft policy for the body-worn cameras. And so that has had a significant amount of progress as well as feedback from a variety of stakeholders. And we've started employee town halls. So the body-worn camera team has gone out to facilities and conducted employee town halls. They've done about a dozen employee town hall events so far, but each event actually includes multiple town halls. So if they go to a facility on a set day, they'll oftentimes do 3 or 4 separate town halls throughout the day so that they can catch people on different shifts. That has been really productive so far. As expected, there are a lot of questions from staff about the technology and the policies and how we'll utilize them, but having that staff there to answer those questions now through the town halls has been kind of an important step for us. So again, we think the technology itself will probably start to deploy early this summer, and we think we're on track with this one, and we look forward to having this in the facilities. Next up is our intelligence unit, which also impacts our phone services. I know this was not included in the original executive recommendation, but it was an initiative that the House brought into the conversation that we were very grateful for. This was to move intel services that were previously paid for through the prisoner phone contract, through a contractor, move those in-house into the MDOC for the sake of kind of longevity and control of that information by the MDOC. It also allowed us to then reduce the cost of phone calls because essentially the users were no longer paying for that fee. This will be a 30 FTE unit. We have hired the administrator who's going to oversee this. We have posted the analyst positions, but we have not started interviews yet. Those will start very soon. We had over 150 interested applicants, though, for those positions, so we're very confident that we'll have a very strong group in that intel unit. While this unit is still kind of forming up and taking shape, we made the move to reduce the cost of phone calls immediately on October 1st, consistent with our commitment to this body. Phone call prices were reduced a further 15% on October 1st to 7.35 cents a minute, and they are now 65% lower than they were in 2015. We are going to secure some software from an existing contracted vendor, but we're continuing to look kind of longer term about other supports that this unit may need from a technology perspective, investigatory tools, et cetera. But again, we're moving forward. We are transitioning away from the Intel services that are provided by the phone contractor. They are still providing some of those services during this interim period, even though that the user's not paying for them. But we, again, will take this all in-house as the year proceeds. The next key investment was also a House priority that we were very grateful for, which was the officer recruitment and retention bonuses. There was $12 million in one-time funding that was included in the budget for this. This was eventually approved by the Civil Service Commission at their February meeting. And so the bonuses will be paid as soon as administratively possible. So essentially as soon as the payroll system can be all the calculations can be done. So we don't have an exact date on that yet in terms of which pay warrant that will go into, but that should be relatively soon. The distribution that was agreed to by the Office of the State Employer and the Michigan Corrections Organization on behalf of their employees was consistent with the distribution that was included in the boilerplate of the budget. So it's a $3,000 signing bonus paid out at 3 different time periods, so $1,000 each to kind of help retain people through the initial year of employment. And then the retention bonuses for current staff are based on years of service or actually date of hire, but they're inverted with the goal being to try to incentivize folks who are early career because we know that's where much of our challenge lies right now in terms of departures. But all existing and active corrections officers, corrections transportation officers, and corrections medical officers will receive some type of retention bonus under this. Next up was a new initiative that was included in the executive rec, and that was ultimately included in the final budget, which was the expansion of our medication-assisted treatment programs. We received just over $11 million in ongoing funding to increase MAT at 3 additional facilities. Those facilities have been selected. They'll be the St. Louis Correctional Facility, which is in St. Louis, Michigan, the Muskegon Correctional Facility in Muskegon, and the Richard A. Hanlon Correctional Facility in Ionia. They are going to come online in a phased approach in the order that I just read them off. I'm expecting that St. Louis will hopefully come online in March, and then Muskegon will come online this summer, and then MTU will come online kind of late summer. So probably 2 to 3 months in between each one. Again, we do that just because it's better, in our opinion, to kind of roll out site by site, work through any potential issues before we do that, move to the next site. We already have 10 sites that are offering MAT, so with the 3 coming online this year, that'll move us to 13, so half of our sites at that point will be actively prescribing and providing medication-assisted treatment. We are still in the process of hiring the positions to support this, so the positions are primarily healthcare positions for the sake of passing the medication, as well as some additional custody positions, to monitor med lines, et cetera. So we're actively in the hiring process for those positions, but do expect to move forward on that timeline with those 3 sites. Our PREA and discriminatory harassment unit was part of the executive recommendation. We received $3.3 million in ongoing funds, as well as some new FTEs. We did make the decision that this unit will operate under our Office of Legal Affairs. We think that's the most logical place for it to be placed because of the litigation-related risks for both PREA and discriminatory harassment. We did initial interviews for a new unit administrator, but we did not select a candidate or did not end up with a final candidate through that initial interview process, so we'll be doing some additional interviews in the very near future. Once we have that administrator on board, we will hire out the rest of that unit. And then the unit will start working in terms of policy reviews, processes, et cetera. In the interim, we still have policies in place for both PREA and discriminatory harassment, so it's not as if these issues are not being worked on a daily basis, but once we have that unit fully staffed out, then we'll move those responsibilities over to that unit in a formal fashion. Next up were peer reentry supports, and I've actually grouped 3 together. While they're each unique programs, they kind of all fit under the same general umbrella, which is trying to help people in communities around the state with peer-led reentry efforts. So these are groups that have folks that work for them or lead them that have been justice involved themselves, and they would like to work to help those that are primarily coming out of prison on parole through that reentry process, through a number of services in select communities. So the first is Come Out, Stay Out, which would serve parolees and their families in the Saginaw region. The next is Silent Cry, serving parolees with a focus on trauma supports in Southeast Michigan. And then finally, Nation Outside, which is going to focus on peer supports, navigation, and services. We think they're likely going to serve 5 separate counties to start based on the size of their appropriation in our discussions with them, so that they'll actually have the kind of the broadest statewide reach, but again, 5 unique counties. We have negotiated contracts and budgets with all 3 of these entities. I am pleased to say that as of this week, all the contracts have been sent out to them, so we're essentially just waiting their signatures. And we expect that all 3 will start services in March with kickoff meetings where we'll do some work with them. We've actually done some pre-kickoff work with a few of them, introducing them to folks that they'll be working with in their regions, and introducing them to key MDOC folks. But in terms of the formal business relationship, all of them will technically start in March. A few other programs that were included in the budget that I just wanted to mention as we get close to wrapping up the long list of initiatives. Mama's Mobile Milk was a program that was placed in during negotiations by the Senate. This was to provide breast milk delivery services to individuals who have delivered while they're at the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility. We are in budget negotiations, and I think we've made significant progress in budget negotiations, but we are still in budget negotiations with this group. So we're not at the same stage as we are with the 3 I previously mentioned in terms of having a contract, but we'll look forward to updating the subcommittee when those negotiations conclude. Next up is Goodwill Flip the Script. I will not say anything because they're in the room and they'll give a much more detailed explanation, other than to say that we're pleased to see their expansion into Oakland County. And then finally, it was a relatively something that was negotiated kind of late in the budget process, but I think it's something that's ultimately going to be impactful in a good way for our facilities, which was there was this creation of this contraband prevention fund for the first time. And it's essentially a fund of money that the department can utilize to purchase equipment or technology to help prevent the introduction of contraband into our facilities. We have made the decision that kind of the first year, so FY24, we're going to use that fund primarily to purchase package scanners for our facilities. So these are kind of X-ray and other technology package scanners. So we receive packages with books and other items that are sent to prisoners. And while they're supposed to come from approved vendors, it is a means by which some people try to introduce contraband into our facilities. So we will be putting these scanners at all of our facilities to help us with those searches, and that will help our warehouse and mailroom staff quite a bit in terms of completing their jobs. So we're very pleased. We're moving forward with those purchases. And then finally, but certainly not least, was the investment in our post-secondary programs. So there was $1.25 million in ongoing included in the budget for kind of a general pot for 4-year schools that are offering baccalaureate degrees within MDOC facilities, as well as a standalone $250,000 appropriation specific to Eastern Michigan, which is offering a baccalaureate program in our Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility. We sent a direct solicitation to the schools in February. That's essentially just us starting the formal process. Their responses to us are actually due tomorrow. So we will get those responses back to us tomorrow, and then that will allow us to move forward with finalizing budgets and contracts with each of those schools. We will kind of post-date those contracts back to October 1st in this case, because they did start semesters this fall, so their fall semesters will be eligible as well as their current semesters and their summer semesters. So we look forward to doing that. We don't know yet because we haven't formally received the responses, but we expect that we'll probably receive responses from either 5 or 6 post-secondary institutions that will then divide that money. So very pleased by that, and I would just share that there's at least one school that has indicated to us that this appropriation was key in them making the decision to launch a program this fall, that if they had not had access to this potential funding, they would not have been able to make the numbers work, and so they wouldn't have been able to launch that program. So again, we're very pleased that this was included. So with that, I'm happy to take questions on any of the initiatives.
Thank you, Kyle, and thanks for that great overview. And there's a lot of positive movement on a lot of things that we talked about prior to that budget decisions that we made working with House and Senate and Department. I think it's good to note that in terms of the relationship, you know, we set the stage in terms of working in conjunction with some of those things that have already been established with, for example, vocational villages, educational opportunities for our incarcerated individuals, because 90% of them are coming home. So I know all of us want those individuals to come home better than they went in. And so that's what you showed today is indicative of those decisions that we collectively made. So thank you for that. We do have a couple questions. First, we'll start out with Minority Chair Slaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe not so much a question. This is really just one of those thanks things. Thanks to the chair for your work last year as we went into budget saying, hey, we really need to fix the phone rates, and so you worked diligently on that and then worked with the department to make it happen, and you guys did make it happen, so thank you for doing that. I just appreciate the work that went into that.
Thank you, Minority Chair. I know you also had that passion when you were chair, so you know we just worked a continuation on that, so appreciate that support. Thank you. Minority Chair, Mr. McKinney.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much, Kyle, for your presentation. And
Majority Chair. Sorry, Majority Chair.
oh, thank you. Just a couple questions. Going back to the slide with the medication assisted treatment, I know you guys identified the 3 MDOC facilities to increase the availability for those funds, but in terms of the expansion sites, have you guys kind of planned that out? Like, can you expand upon those expansion sites if you guys haven't already?
Yeah, so we have been kind of expanding where we think it makes the most sense. The reality is there is a need for medication-assisted treatment across our system. Yeah. And so I think the long term is that this type of treatment would be available at all of the MDOC sites. But we have to be realistic both about you know, the capacity to expand as well as the cost of expanding. And so what we've tried to do is kind of select the sites that we think there's the most impact from in terms of adding to the list. So we have 10 now, and then the 3 that we selected, to us, these are sites where we think that there's that need. You know, also that we think we can apply the resources, particularly the staffing resources, that we can secure the staffing resources in those communities to make it happen. We haven't really talked too much about what might come next. I will say there's a 4th site that's on our radar that would sort of be the next site. But beyond that 4th site, we haven't really laid out where the remaining sites would fall in terms of the sequencing. But obviously, we'd like to get these sites up this year, and then we can kind of return to that conversation about where we would head next.
Perfect. And whatever we can do to help support those efforts, because healthcare, you know, it's needed everywhere, and all across the facilities across the state. My second question and final question would be around the peer reentry supports, the one-time funding. You mentioned that a lot of these groups like Come Out, Stay Out, Nation Outside, Silent Cry, they're already got those contracts already out and waiting to get, you know, signed and sent back. But in terms of what they're going to be doing day to day, and I think you mentioned, what, 5 counties that you guys are potentially looking at having them participate in and having those programs in. Can you expound on those 5 counties?
Yeah.
Just from my knowledge.
Yeah, Nation Outside is the one that's going to be in 5 counties.
Got it.
And they're going to be have some presence in Southeast Michigan, have some presence in Washtenaw County. I believe on the west side of the state, I may need to correct myself, but I believe perhaps Muskegon County. So delving into these a little further, Nation Outside is really focused. They have this model, which is a peer-led support around navigation, mentoring, et cetera. So they want to work directly with individuals to kind of supplement what might already be available in those communities, but do it as kind of a trusted voice to work with individuals because they themselves have been impacted by incarceration. So they want to form kind of those key relationships, those mentoring, those support relationships for those folks. Come Out, Stay Out is going to focus on Saginaw. That's sort of a multifaceted contract. As we worked through the negotiation and talked to that group, we kind of discovered a couple different areas where we think they could be beneficial. Some of it's going to be in the community, actually working with the families of incarcerated individuals and doing workshops and other support events for the families to kind of get ready for their loved one to come back to them, which is pretty unique, and I think a really good test case to see kind of how it works. They're also going to be doing some programming at the Saginaw Correctional Facility, where they'll actually be going into the facility to work with individuals there who are returning to the Saginaw area or maybe returning to a broader area than that. And then they'll be working with parolees directly in the community. Again, sort of in that peer support, peer mentoring, peer navigation perspective. Silent Cry is very much a trauma-focused entity, so they're going to be working in Southeast Michigan. They're going to be doing, some group-based programming, some therapeutic-type programming, working with people on the trauma, not only pre-incarceration trauma, but also the trauma from incarceration, and kind of making that adjustment back. So I think what's interesting, and we'll obviously be watching each of these programs closely to see, how they perform over the next year, is that we have three sort of related programs in the sense that they're very dependent on peers and kind of trusted voices, but each has their own unique character in terms of what they're trying to achieve in their areas. So I think it gives us some good opportunity to see kind of what works, what maybe needs to be refined in the future.
Thank you, Kyle.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation today. My question is on the substance use disorder side. So I'm really happy to see the medication assisted treatment being expanded. Can you just speak to what other resources are available to those incarcerated while they're in? Is one of those things peer support? Because that seems to be a model, across the state that is working. And so I'm just curious if you're doing that.
Yeah, so we have started to pilot peer recovery coaches at some of our facilities. They're not available at every facility currently, but we do have peer recovery coaches, so other individuals who are incarcerated who have done some programming to then serve in that role. In terms of other supports, we offer 2 levels of outpatient substance use treatment. So separate from MAT, MAT would be oftentimes done in conjunction with those programs, but separate from MAT, we do that. Many of the facilities also offer voluntary, options, group options, AA, NA, things like that. The peer recovery coaches, I think, have been a really intriguing opportunity, both inside and outside. We're also using a lot of peer recovery coaches increasingly in the community. And in the community in particular, because we've been able to gather a lot of feedback, they seem to have a really significant impact, really significant positive impact. And so I think we'd like to continue to find ways to expand those opportunities. Again, having those trusted voices, having people who can connect on that level seems to be really key in terms of kind of establishing and maintaining recovery.
Cal, also, just a follow-up on the 10 locations you mentioned. Can you provide that to the committee, those locations?
Yes, I will do that via email because I
right.
do not
And
remember
then
off the top of my head.
Share with the committee the university information we talked about, the education program.
Yes, I'll provide that list as well, yep.
All right, thank you. So much, Kyle. Appreciate it very much. Next, we'll call on Dan Vanier, CEO, and Greg Anderson, Director of Goodwill of Greater Detroit, to present. Gentlemen.
Escape and go to the other tab. Yeah. Good morning. Good morning, Chairman O'Neill. Thank you so much. Great to see you. Good morning, Majority Chair, Minority Chair Slaw. Great to see you both again, and all of the honorable members of the committee. It's great to be with you. My name is Dan Varner. Again, my privilege to serve as President and CEO of Goodwill Industries of Greater Detroit. With me today is Greg Anderson, who is the leader of our Flip the Script program, which we're here to tell you a little bit more about today. Really quickly, we'll run through 3 kind of major sections of the presentation, and we'll go fairly quickly through the first and the third. You've seen those before, but I'm fond of saying that Goodwill is too well kept a secret. Everybody knows the name and the smiling G logo, but too few folks know what we do and how well we do it. So I do like to remind folks every chance I get. So we were started well over 100 years ago by a Methodist minister by the name of Edgar Helms. And the start here, he actually went to settlement homes in Boston and worked with new immigrants to the country, and then went to, he saw the conditions they were living in, their difficulties finding new jobs in America, and he went to folks who lived in the Boston community and took used items from them, and his commitment to them was, I will take these back to the settlement house, we'll repair them and sell them, and these will be the first jobs that these immigrants to America perform. We are a hand up, not a hand out, and that commitment to inclusion of everybody in the American dream has been core to Goodwill since we were founded 150 years ago. At Goodwill Industries of Greater Detroit, we're one of 160 organizations around the country who do the Goodwill work. This just includes our vision and mission and core ideology. I won't go through the details of it now, but feel free to refer to it. It's in the packet, which all of you have. I do like to spend a little bit of time on this slide because this really helps you understand how Goodwill works. So folks with employment barriers, if you start in the top left corner, come to us with needs. Our mission is to help folks achieve independence through personal development and the power of work. And those folks all have some form of barrier to employment, whether that is a physical disability, an intellectual or developmental disability, mental illness, justice involvement, maybe chronic under or unemployment, poor educational outcomes, and the like. They come to us for help, and we put them in a variety of programs depending upon their needs in order to respond to those needs. Out of those, and those dollars, we pay for those programs in multiple ways, in part through grants and donations, which come from members of the public and philanthropy and the like, which is indicated on the slide there in the bottom left. As folks exit those programs, they transition into permanent employment, competitive employment with private industry throughout our state. They also sometimes, if they need additional time, will transition into employment. We call it transitional employment in one of our businesses that we run. We run 3 businesses here at Goodwill Industries of Greater Detroit. The thrift stores, which are iconic and everybody knows, but that's actually our smallest business. We run 2 manufacturing businesses, given the manufacturing legacy of our great state and region. We run a Tier 1 automotive supplier called Goodwill Integrated Solutions, we changed the name. We also run an industrial recycling company called Goodwill's Greenworks that helps keep heavy metals out of the landfill. So when there's a storm and DTE lines come down, for example, all of that stuff comes to us. We take it into its component parts, shred it, sell it on the commodities market, and split the proceeds with DTE. And each of those businesses is what we call mission integrated. So folks, our trainees, these folks who we're helping, are working in those businesses, either in transitional roles or sometimes long-term roles. If you're living with an intellectual or developmental disability, we are an employer of choice for many folks in that community, and they will work with us for many, many years in those businesses. So each one of those, GIS is a quick example, 70% of the production hours performed by folks there are performed by folks living with intellectual or developmental disabilities. And they are building parts that go into the cars that you and I drive, right? Every vehicle, we serve all 3 OEMs, and so all of us are driving vehicles with parts that were in part manufactured or assembled by folks living with intellectual and developmental disabilities at Goodwill Integrated Solutions, something we should all be proud of. When we're running those businesses well, sometimes they generate margin. That margin goes right back into all of our programming to help support programs like Flip the Script and occupational training programs and many of the other programs that we run. So that's how Goodwills generally work, and specifically how Goodwill of Greater Detroit works. I will not spend time on these next couple of slides, but feel free to review them at their leisure. They share a little bit more information about specific programs that we run for folks living with mental illness or intellectual or developmental disabilities or the like, and then a little bit of information about our 3 businesses, which I just mentioned, and we've got slides. The next 3 slides go into a little deeper detail on each of those businesses. I won't spend time on them now, just in the interest of time, but feel free to dive into them at your leisure as you go. So we offer a variety of services through all of those programs in order to meet the needs of the trainees with whom we work, community members with whom we work, everything from case management, of course, to pre-employment supports, to all of what folks need in order to get jobs, to post-employment support as well, because it's no good to get you the job if you then wash out of the job, right? We've got to stick with you. And that first check doesn't solve all of your problems. We got to stick with you for a little while to make sure you get on your feet and actually keep and maintain that job, retain that job over time. And then lastly, really quickly, just an example of our 2023 outcomes, of which we're very proud. A job placement rate at 82%. Job retention rates are 94% over 90 days. They are still well over 80% at 180 days, by the way. And we stick with folks for a solid year afterwards. So sometimes they have to come back to us and maybe get more training. So they actually wash out of a job, they come back to us, stick with us, and go through additional training for another 3 months maybe, and then go back out into the marketplace in order to get a job again. Average starting hourly wages, as you see, north of $18, a fact that we're extremely proud of. These are living wage jobs and career starters, really, that we're able to get people into. And then you see the amount of wages that we paid specifically to trainees. So that figure is for folks living with intellectual developmental disabilities, justice-involved populations. The people that I mentioned earlier with those barriers, they received over almost $900,000 in wages from us last year alone. A couple of things to share with you that are new for us. We've partnered with CVS and opened one of only a half a dozen workforce innovation and talent centers at our headquarters in Detroit. And this is where folks can come and get trained by CVS in retail, pharmacy technician jobs, and logistics jobs tied to CVS operations. So we're extremely proud of that. You've got a photo of what it looks like a little bit inside. By the way, there's a mock store. So what's not in the photo to the left is it's a mock CVS store. Their point of sale system, everything else, folks learn how to use. And we are really pleased to share that we're launching training for folks to become technicians on EV charging stations. That will launch in June. It's a pilot program. We're one of 4 Goodwills in the country to be launching that in partnership with General Motors and Accenture. So more good news will come on that. We'll go more public with that and share many more details as we get closer to the launch of it. Really excited about that. And then, of course, other skilled trades training as well that's not reflected here. We're starting a craft labor training program in June as well, and more skilled trades to come. And then what we're here to talk about today, which is the grand opening of the Flip the Script Oakland County location in Pontiac. And so we want to thank you for the funding in order to do that, in order to help serve a community that we're committed to and have been for a long time with this particular need, which is profound. So I'm going to pitch it over to Greg, who will share a little bit more about that opening in January and the work that we're doing in Pontiac.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great morning.
Got you. I got you. Just stay there.
All right. So just a little bit about Flip the Script and what we're doing in Wayne County. We're focusing here on Wayne County. Next slide. Our services under the appropriation are totally focused on probationers. And want you all to know that we are working with medium to high-risk probationers that have a high rate of recidivism or possibility of recidivism. And the other eligibility criteria is listed there. One of the things that was important to us in 2023, early on in Q1, was to really understand, since we're working with medium to high risk probationers, how does that back into City of Detroit high violent and shooting zip codes? And what you see here in front of you is that we are actually working with some of the most violent and high risk offenders because of zip codes like 48205, 48228, and the like. And so just wanted to outline that within our work. How Flip the Script works, I won't spend a lot of time here, but I do want to talk about cognitive behavioral programming. That's really where we spend time restructuring the cognitive ability to make decisions around unhelpful thought patterns and things that will lead to incarceration. Something that's really not talked about a lot about Flip the Script is our GED preparation. A lot of times it's not about the GED. Sometimes people come to us with a second grade reading and math level. What it is about at that point is to increase their literacy levels in math and reading so they can help their children with their homework, and so we can move people outside of a functionally illiterate type of segment or population. We are focused on GEDs, and there's some information in our annual report about that, so feel free to peruse at your leisure. One of the things that's also important is career exposure. If you think about how people are being introduced to careers here, what's happening is you come into a room, you see a presentation, and you say you like that. We focus more on hands-on career exposure so you can make an informed decision, especially for high-risk offenders. A lot of them have never worked a day in their life. So we want to make sure that they make a decision that is informed, and you will see in a couple slides. Also important is financial literacy and coaching. And so we use the Financial Opportunity Center model to make sure folks have bank accounts, budgeting, and the like. Next slide. And here's a few slides about the career exposure that we're talking about. So 4 to 6 hours, hands-on career exposure. This here is asbestos abatement, so everything we do is high demand, high talent careers based on the state of Michigan research that we have done and that is there. And what I want to point out here in this slide is that these young men are working in groups. They are from rival neighborhoods. They are only 3 weeks into cohort learning, and there's no issues with one another. So they're also forming relationships and bonding with one another, and usually they will walk right past each other at a gas station or may have conflict with one another. Heavy equipment is another one for us, and so they learn the safety. They actually get to drive, and this is right in our parking lot. They actually get to drive heavy equipment and see if that's a field that they would like to go into. And here's a few pictures to show some of the participants. Next slide. Also roofing, and so we don't want them climbing on anything, so we build some stations where you can learn roofing, OSB boards, how the shingles go on and the like. And what you see to our right is a competition at the end to remove those shingles. And if they like the trade, then we'll sign them up through Detroit at Work, our own centers, as well as individual training providers throughout the city of Detroit and Oakland County. Next slide. Also in carpentry, so it's always a big myth about people utilizing math skills. What you see on the left is them learning how to measure and different things, and what you see on the right is someone actually utilizing those skills as they go through career exposure in carpentry. Next slide. Here's some of our outcomes that we wanted to share. Of course, there's more in our detailed report, but these outcomes are very important to us. So 97% of our enrolled participants were diverted from prison and jail. I also want to point out that many of them, and it's listed here as far as the percentage, also did not have a violation. And many of them also successfully completed probation as well. 51% increased their literacy rate. Next slide. Also important to us is this is something new to Flip the Script, as well as the career exposure. Also a part of our cognitive behavior programming is college and university tours. And this is a twofold thing for us. A lot of times in the family structure, many of them will be first-generation college students if they decide to go to college instead of the trade. What's most important to us is the exposure to college. So GED participants, as well as cognitive behavior program participants, we take them down to Wayne State in Detroit. Wayne State has a program called Educational Transition Coordination Program that helps any justice-involved person enroll in any college in Michigan. And this is, to our right, is some of our participants in a mock lecture with Dr. Chike from Wayne State. Also important, a lot of times we talk about the changes of individuals that are involved in the criminal justice system. However, we don't celebrate those changes a lot. We decided that we would go back to something that we had did for a number of years previous, and that's the celebration of transformation. And so we give awards to those in job placement, resilience, academic excellence. To our left here is one of the Resilience Award winners, as well as his case manager, job coach at that time. And to the right is also as important, some of the agents from the Michigan Department of Corrections in a very important relationship of ours. They really, really care about what's going on with the people that they're serving. And so we want to give them awards. They come to the building and do their visitation, and we want to make sure that we award those folks that do so. On your right is 3 of the agents from 3 different district offices that we provided awards to. This is a real example of our work. We have a short video, but I'll tell you a little bit about Jamal before we show that video. Jamal Clemens started with us in September of 2023, homeless, had been in the foster care system since an infant, been in many GED programs and just couldn't get it together. And I'll let the video tell you the rest.
At 5:30, Michigan's recidivism rate hit a record low in 2023 at 22.3%. That means about 22% of people who are released return to prison within 3 years.
Well, now there's a program designed to help the formerly convicted stay on the right path, and it's now expanded to Oakland County. Our AJ Walker is on your block in Pontiac with more on how that group is helping to change lives.
Jamal Clemens is trying to overcome a rocky past by joining the Flip the Script program at the Goodwill of Greater Detroit.
Been in jail over like approximately 15 to 20 times.
What do you think keeps leading you back to jail?
Most of the time, me being homeless, trying to figure out a way for myself, trying to figure out a way I'm gonna eat, trying to take care of my family.
He says not being a part of a traditional family is also what started him down the road to jail and in trouble in the streets.
Yes, I've been in foster care since around like 6 months to a year old. Words can't explain the feeling. Just knowing being around people, seeing them with their moms and things like that, it gets you a lot of doubt. It gets you wondering, like, why not me? Why I'm not good enough to have my mom in my life? Why I'm not good enough to have the love that I deserve?
But now he says he has something to live for and to fight to succeed for.
I got a son. I got a 3-year-old son named Lamont. That's the motivation. That's the drive.
But even though he says he has the motivation, finding a way to turn his life around is hard with his criminal record.
I just became a felon in March of last year. So since then, it's been kind of hard trying to find jobs that's going to accept me being a felon.
That's where Flip the Script comes in. Jamal is currently in their Detroit area program. And with this new facility that had their grand opening earlier this month, others like him in Oakland County can get their shot at a second chance by being a part of this diversionary program.
16 to 39-year-olds in Wayne and Oakland County can be referred to the program by a judge and or a Michigan Department of Corrections probation agent.
Greg Anderson is the director of Flip the Script Empowerment Programs. He says they teach valuable skills in each of these rooms like skills trade, resume building, GED prep, and more. And in their workforce readiness training room, they do just that.
Is this the most important room? Because it seems like if people can't get a job, then they're probably going to end up going back to the things that led them to get locked up in the first place.
Yes, this room is very imperative to success. When you're in economic challenge and you don't see yourself as a part of these different types of fields, you think there's no other way for you than criminal activity.
Jamal has earned his GED while in the program. He says he wants to be a social worker and is starting that journey this fall now that he's been accepted to Wayne State University.
I had dreams about going to college, but I never thought it was in my life. And for it to be coming true, I'm proud of myself.
In Pontiac, I'm AJ Walker.
So before I pass it back over to Dan to talk about some benefits to the state of Michigan based on the Flip the Script program, that's our work. That's the work that we do every day, and we look forward to the opportunity to continue that work.
We didn't say it explicitly, but we should share. So the Pontiac office that you all funded last year did celebrate its grand opening in January, at the end of January. We already have begun serving folks out of that office. Maybe you should mention really quickly where we're.
So where we are is that we begin to service folks. We have a relationship with the Pontiac probation office led by the Michigan Department of Corrections. We've received about 20 referrals thus far, and we'll continue to make relationships with the 6th Circuit Court, 50th District Court, as well as other offices, as the Troy probation office as well.
So in terms of benefits to the state, I did not update this slide, and so this is what we shared with you last year, and it's quite frankly outdated at this point. It assumes that we serve about 300 folks a year, and we're now serving north of 500, and so quite honestly, the financial benefit to the state is almost doubled. It's also a challenging slide, I know, for the department, who is an important partner of ours, because it is pulling from the recidivism rate. We've chatted with Kyle repeatedly about getting the probation failure rate, which is also a comparable rate. It gets very technical when we start diving down these roads. Jamal Clemens, who you saw there, obviously was previously convicted of crime, and so recidivism is something that applies, but he is also a probationer, and so probation failure rates could also apply. So anyway, our commitment remains to work with the department and hopefully get the data that we need in order to give you the really, truly accurate comparative figure for the folks that we're serving versus the general population of folks who are comparable. The bottom line, though, I think, is that we would all agree that the savings to the state in preventing folks from committing new crimes, whether it is a recidivism issue or a probation failure issue, the cost savings to the state are substantial. We're talking tens of millions of dollars over time. And so thank you again for your commitment to supporting Flip the Script. There are, of course, other benefits which are important. So I should actually spend just a second on this. For somebody like Jamal to go from ward of the state, unemployed, effectively costing the state money, to employed, able to take care of his family, and paying taxes to the state, right, is a complete flip. Like those kinds of benefits, the benefits to the employer community, who then get folks like Jamal, who, by the way, are highly motivated to be successful, are just looking for a chance. Those kinds of benefits, really, it's impossible to actually quantify, but are critically important and maybe even more important than the one indicated on the previous slide. So thank you again for your support. Happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much for the information. We are short of time, but what you just described is basically what this committee is all about in terms of working to reduce that recidivism rate and then put those folks back on the tax rolls, homeowners, car buyers, positive contributors to society. And so, great story, great information. We do have a question from our Majority Vice Chair, McKinney.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you guys for also being here this morning. You know, it's not necessarily a question, it's more of a comment. And Jamal's story resonates in my district completely. You know, you guys highlighted some of the high crime rates in Detroit and my neck of the woods, Northeast Detroit. You know, we're also known as the Red Zone 48205. And I told this story last week in the committee. I had a 22-year-old shot and killed on my block last week. And, you know, those who know, I have a 2-year-old at home and a newborn, both young boys, and then I'm going to have to help raise in our communities. And I'm just trying to hold back tears because it's difficult for these kids to figure out who they are. And they need so much love. They need so much opportunities. And what you guys are providing is phenomenal. And I've seen it day in and day out. And so we got to, we got to support programs like this. And I just can't tell you enough, man. I'm so excited to hear about, forgive me from my mind right now because it's going everywhere. But we heard in earlier testimony, because I got the privilege to sit on the Labor Economic Opportunity Subcommittee with our chair sitting to my right, Chair Snyder. And we heard about the housing issues and the workforce gap in our construction. And so what you guys are doing in terms of providing opportunities and training for roofing and carpentry, like we need more of that. We need to be able to connect the dots here at the state to help support a lot of our systems and bring everything together. So I just appreciate what you guys are doing, and also like to see what's going on with the, you know, EVs and all that. I want to see that. I really want to come take a tour and see what you guys are doing and do whatever we can to support. So I'll leave it there because I know we're short on time, but just thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. McKinney, and I'll just close out with this. I'll just close out with this in terms of the work we do. And as he just alluded to, Rep. Snyder and his committee, I also sit on the committee with my chair, Rep. Morris, for DHSS. And yesterday, we had some great presentations from some organizations regarding community violence intervention. And Force Detroit stood out like a bright light. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you heard of Force Detroit in terms of the services that they provide to those young men and women that are in transition, and putting folks in their way, not in the way in a bad way, but in front of them that have life experience, and, you know, forging ways and path for success. And so collectively, I think all of us have the right mindset in terms of trying to reduce the tax burden on the state. That's first. And then trying to sort of re-incentivize or re-incentivize the positive nature of, taking a different path, which you just described, and what's happening with Force Detroit and those other programs. We had about 5 or 6 that presented yesterday and talked about all the changes they're making in the lives of young folks. And so that in itself, for me, and I'm hopeful for my colleagues, just reaffirms the fact how important it is for us to do this work and make those right decisions financially to support those community organizations that are doing the hard work. So thank you for your commitment and your longstanding relationship with the department. And I think that's even the message that I tried to articulate earlier. We all in this thing together. We sink or swim together.
That's right.
Right? There's no compartmentalization of Michigan.
Right.
We're all Michiganders. And so if Michigan goes up, we all go up. If Michigan goes down, we all go down, whether you're Republican or Democrat. And so, the message, we want to maintain is let's work together. Let's solve this problem together. Let's put our heads together. We don't have to agree all the time, but we can agree to disagree for the betterment of our state. So with that, I thank you for your time. Thank you, Kyle, for the department and your hard work and all your team members that support you. And I'll thank my committee members for, your commitment to this task as well.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, Madam Clerk, seeing there's no absent members, this meeting's adjourned.